Joining us now, Sandy Middleton, Executive Director of the Center for Violence Prevention, and Lindsey Simmons, Board President, Mississippians Against Human Trafficking. Ladies, thanks for coming in.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us.
All right, give us the update. What's going on there with the human trafficking situation here in the state of Mississippi? This is such a scourge, and every time we talk about this, I get sad that it's even going on, honestly. But we have strengthened the laws in the state in the last couple of years. And without a doubt, there's more attention on this, I think, in the state than there has been historically.
And more money. I mean, the legislature has been wonderful to appropriate money to go directly to services for victims. And for us, for the center, we have been able to now have 10 rapid response advocates spread throughout the state of Mississippi, and that's been hugely impactful for identifying and screening victims and getting them services. I've got some stats.
Okay.
2022 tips that come through either CPS or the Human Trafficking Hotline. So far this year, 2022, 325 child tips. So far this year, 162 tips on children. We at the Tower have had 27 in shelter. We've got 82 outreach clients that we're still working with, but on an average, we're responding to about 200 victims through our rapid response program. So we're super busy, and like I said, thankfully, we've got this money now to assist in hiring these rapid response advocates. That's just really been key to engaging with prospective victims, on site when they're recovered, to be able to get them to the right places. And, of course, Speaker Gunn, we just are so appreciative to him and to leadership for what they've done for us, and just leaning forward to hope for the same thing.
So describe for us Sandy, what the typical victim of human trafficking looks like. What's the profile?
Well, there's almost always a vulnerability, whether that means they're a child who has been in the foster care system, whether they're somebody that's has alcohol or drug addiction. And of course, now the situation on the border is going to complicate things, going to continue to complicate things for us. We've just hired a full-time Hispanic-speaking case manager to deal with those. And actually, we have a couple of rapid response advocates who also speak Spanish, because we're just gearing up for the rise in those numbers that we're going to have to try to absorb in addition to everything else. So, typical, there's usually some sort of vulnerability that can just always be at the top of the list.
Yeah.
And almost always a history of sexual abuse.
Right.
So you usually see some abuse in the home that led to them running away or something like that. And for the kids, almost all of them have touched the foster system at some point. So we see a lot of that with the kids.
And honestly, that was, upon learning that, I was totally shocked to find out that a great number of these victims end up in trafficking, and they're being trafficked by their own families.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of drugs. Drugs is usually the cause of that. Moms that will sell their child so they can get drugs, and it's hard for all of us to fathom, but it's certainly something we see fairly often.
Unbelievable.
And it's intergenerational too. I mean, it's been accepted, maybe 2 generations ago it was accepted, and so now kids just grow up in it, and they just accept it, that this is what we do. I mean, this is what's done to us. This is, my contribution to the family or to the gang. Little girls, gangs always promise big things to girls, that they could potentially be a leader or whatnot, and it never happens. I mean, young girls are never given any leadership positions, and so their role with gang affiliation is either a drug mule or sex trafficking.
Man, it's crazy. So sad. Lindsey, what about this movie, The Sound of Freedom? How is that heightened awareness of human trafficking?
Yeah, we were super excited about this. Our organization hosted a preview night for that on Monday, and we were able to watch it. And it's been great to bring awareness around the country and around the world. And that movie was actually finished 5 years ago, and they couldn't get anyone to release it. So this is great that we finally are at this point where they have it in some theaters. And it was a really good movie. I highly encourage people to go see it. We want to support that kind of stuff. We want Hollywood and the powers that be to know that we want to see things like that.
That's right.
And we also hope that it opens the door for us, because the story there was some kids who were promised a modeling career, and their parents left them their photos to be taken, and they got kidnapped and sold into trafficking. And we know that happens in other countries, but that's not really the story that we see here. Kind of the hysterics that you see of someone saying, someone followed me around Target and they were trying to traffic my child. Like, we just don't really know that to be true here. So we hope that this movie raises awareness on a broader scale, and then also gives us the opportunity to do things like this and speak to different groups and show people what it does look like here, which is the familial and the gang trafficking and foster care connections and things like that. So we hope that opens that door for us to continue to raise awareness.
And you guys, Mississippians Against Human Trafficking, and our other organizations, as well as the Attorney General, have worked with like other organizations, the Truckers Association, convenience stores, and so forth, where a lot of times these victims are present, and it's sort of educational in that they can detect the warning signs of this person's being trafficked.
Yeah, that's our goal in this organization, is to kind of what do you do? Where are you in your day-to-day life that you could see these victims? Are you a truck driver and you're at those truck stops? Are you a teacher? What can you look for in your classroom? Do you work at a daycare, the YMCA? Just a parent. I mean, as my kids' friends come over, like, I want to be the parent that's a safe place for them, and that they know, they could tell us something, and that they're not going to be exposed to anything at my house that's unsafe. So even as a parent, just being another safe voice, another safe adult for kids. But yeah, that's our goal, is to help people know in Mississippi what they can do on a day-to-day basis to recognize trafficking.
And law enforcement organizations, they're updating their training as well constantly, so that they're able to better detect.
Right. I mean, that goes back to our landmark piece of legislation that set up the certified human trafficking investigator certification, and they've certified well over 300 at this point. And so, now there's a really good network across the state that law enforcement investigators can reach out to each other and get help with a case. Or, a lot of times you have to have equipment to look into these cases and to investigate them. Like, the phones are the big issue, and, to be able to dump the phones and, have the technology to be able to investigate on the cellular devices. I mean, it's all a big part of appropriate investigations.
And we want them to reach out to people that have that training, or the AG's office, and get that help, and don't just try to do it on your own if you don't know what you're doing. Reach out, because these cases can get big and deep, and can cross state lines, and so we need other people involved.
Do you feel like, is it hopeless? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And I know you talked about the border, which of course has seen a lot of increase in trafficking because the border seems to be just wide open. But your thoughts?
I don't think it's getting worse. I think we're all getting more aware. And so we're talking about it more. I mean, trafficking's been going on since the beginning of time. If you read the Bible, you see trafficking from the beginning of time. But we're more aware of it, and I think we are all taking steps to be more proactive, and we're talking about it more, and it makes it seem like it's going on more, but it's probably the same as it's always been. I do think the phone's at another level of access, especially to kids, that we didn't have before. But then that also is social media and technology allows us to all talk more and share more. So the awareness is huge, and I don't feel like it's hopeless. I feel like we're making some progress.
Well, I don't feel like it's hopeless, because we get to see victims get appropriate services and recover and start a new life. And so for us, I mean, that's a blessing in of itself. When you see one person who has been through a lifetime of rape, abuse, exploitation, and they go through maybe A&D treatment and long-term restoration therapy and treatment, and they're a new person at the end. And so, you know, when I said we have 25 in shelter this year, I mean, to be able to see the life-changing impact of a long-term specialized program is magic, and it's very inspirational.
Yeah.
So it's hard to feel hopeless when you see people whose lives are changed.
And hopefully, we're about out of time here, but hopefully with all this technology and all the awareness as well, the training, the laws and so forth, you're coming into contact and able to get to more and rescue these people,
exactly.
the victims. Yeah. Appreciate you ladies coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Glad to be
always
here.
appreciate the update. It's a scourge. It's horrific, and thanks for all your efforts. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming right back with more here in the Element Well studios. Stay with us.